Have you ever actually stopped to wonder why spices have the highest markup in the entire grocery store? Think about it. You're walking down the aisles, tossing ground beef, milk, maybe some fresh fruit into your cart, but it's actually those tiny little jars of nutmeg and thyme that are secretly driving the absolute biggest profit margins. Crazy, right? Well, today, we're going to pry open the mysterious black box of real-world pricing.
Welcome to this explainer on the theory and practice of pricing strategy. We're going on a bit of a journey today, starting with the basic foundational rules of market economics and taking it all the way to the savvy, and honestly, sometimes kind of sneaky tactics the business managers use every single day to maximize their profits. By the time we're done here, I promise you're never going to look at a price tag the same way again.
All right, let's dive right in. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit the rules of the market, creating value and advantage, the math behind markups, the price discrimination playbook, and we'll wrap up with some real-world pricing tricks. Let's get to it.
Section 1. The rules of the market. We're just laying down a little microeconomic groundwork here so we can really understand how a manager sets a price.
So market behavior basically boils down to two incredibly powerful principles. First up is the optimization principle. It sounds fancy, but it just means that people try to choose the absolute best patterns of consumption they can possibly afford. We all want the most bang for our buck, right? Second is the equilibrium principle. This one states that prices will naturally adjust in a market until the exact amount people demand perfectly matches the amount being supplied. These two invisible forces are just constantly doing this little dance behind the scenes.
And that brings us to what is literally the most critical concept of this entire explainer: the reservation price. This is the absolute maximum amount a person is willing to pay to purchase a good or service. It's that exact dollar amount where you, as a customer, are just completely on the fence between buying the item or walking away. As you'll see, the ultimate goal of pretty much every business out there is to figure out your exact reservation price and then extract exactly that amount from your wallet.
Section 2. Creating value and advantage. This is all about the manager's dilemma in carving out a market edge. So let's pivot away from the broad market and look at the individual firm's perspective to see how they actually generate a profit.
Carving out that edge always begins with value creation. And the value created by a firm can be boiled down to a really simple formula. Value created equals the perceived benefit to the customer minus the cost of inputs. V equals B minus C. Think of this total value like a giant pie. The equilibrium price slices that pie into two pieces. One piece is the consumer's surplus. That's the warm, fuzzy feeling that you got a bargain. The other piece is the producer's profit. Naturally, the bigger the total pie, the more profit a firm can potentially grab.
This brilliantly illustrates how a firm creates a competitive advantage to make more profit than its rivals. Basically, they've got two main levers they can pull. On one hand, they can aggressively go after a cost advantage. That means lowering their manufacturing costs while keeping the product's perceived benefit exactly the same. Or they can totally switch gears and aim for a benefit advantage. That's when they elevate the perceived quality of the product in the customer's mind without drastically jacking up their own costs.
Section 3. The math behind markups. How grocery stores and catalogs actually set their prices. Okay, so once a firm creates this value, how do they practically stick a price tag on it in the real world? Take a look at this actual data from a typical regional grocery store chain. The contrast here is just fascinating. Ground beef, that has a markup of only 0 to 10%. Milk is incredibly low too, sitting right around 0 to 5%. Fresh fruit, when it's out of season, jumps up a bit to 15 or 20%. But spices? Oh, they are guarded like gold dust. A manager of this exact grocery chain actually noted that in 20 years, he couldn't recall a single store promotion for spices. They literally have the highest markup in the entire store. But why?
The secret here is something called the price elasticity of demand. Now, don't let the jargon scare you. It basically just measures how sensitive we are to price changes. The rule of thumb is super simple. The optimal markup is large when price sensitivity is low, and it's small when price sensitivity is high. Things like milk and ground beef are highly price-sensitive staples. Shoppers know exactly what a gallon of milk should cost, and they'll absolutely go to a different store if your price is too high. But spices, our demand for nutmeg is incredibly insensitive to price. If you're baking a pie and you need nutmeg, you're going to buy it, even if it costs $1 more than it did last month. Because you aren't sensitive to the price, the store can slap a massive markup on it to get right up to your reservation price.
Let me show you just how extreme this math can get. 357%. That was the actual optimal markup calculated for a catalog retailer selling a basic 2-strap Birkenstock sandal. By testing out a small early bird discount and tracking how the demand shifted, economists were able to calculate the exact price sensitivity of the buyers. And it turns out, because buyers were absolutely desperate to get their toes into some Birks, they weren't sensitive to price changes at all. So the math dictated a staggering 357% markup. That is the sheer power of optimal markup mathematics in action.
Section 4, the price discrimination playbook. Charging different people different prices. Because, let's face it, what if your customers don't all have the exact same price sensitivity?
So the crucial point here is that price discrimination happens whenever different classes of customers are charged totally different markups for the exact same product, and there are 3 degrees to this. First degree is pretty rare. That's when a seller extracts the absolute maximum each individual will pay. Think of a car salesman negotiating with you one-on-one. Second degree is setting prices based on quantity. Bulk rates. Buying one is expensive, but a 20-pack is dirt cheap. And then there's third degree, which is by far the most common. This is simply separating customers into distinct classes based on their unique traits, like offering a student discount.
Let's look at a really brilliant example of third-degree price discrimination using Unilis University football tickets. The university knew they were dealing with 2 distinct groups. You had the general public, who were willing to pay up to $225 a ticket, and then you had students, who would only even enter the market if prices dropped below $125. Now, if the school just charged one flat price for everyone, the math says they'd maximize profit at $85, selling 60,000 tickets. But by discriminating, charging the public $125 and offering a student discount of $75, they still sold 60,000 tickets, but they extracted way more of the public's reservation price. The end result? Their operating surplus jumped from $2.1 million to $2.5 million. Same exact product, different classes, maximum profit.
Section 5, Real-World Pricing Tricks. Clever tactics to maximize profit. Let's finish up with a rapid-fire look at some everyday tactics companies use to quietly siphon off your consumer surplus. I guarantee you've fallen for at least one of these.
First up on the list is 2-part pricing. This is when a company charges a fixed membership fee up front plus a smaller per-unit usage charge. The classic example is a country club or a golf course. Instead of just charging you $60 every single time you want to play around, they hit you with a massive lifetime membership fee, we're talking thousands of dollars, and then charge a tiny $20 greens fee per round. That huge upfront fee isn't random. It's mathematically designed to extract the entire surplus value you would have gotten over a lifetime of playing at that course.
Next, we have bundling. This is when they offer a package of 2 or more goods that just seems way more attractive than buying them separately. Ever notice how a car dealership always wants to sell you a luxury package? Tinted windows, premium audio, custom wheels, all rolled into one? Or how they bundle oil changes and radiator flushes into a special service package? Since they don't know exactly what you're willing to pay for each individual item, bundling them all together lets the firm capture a much larger lump sum from you than if they priced everything out a la carte.
Then there's peak load pricing. This one is all about capacity. When demand for a service goes through the roof and strains capacity, the price suddenly goes up. A great example is the Gotham Bridge Transit Authority charging $9 for a crossing during rush hour, but only $3.50 during off-peak times. The infrastructure costs the exact same to operate regardless of the time of day. But because rush hour drivers are desperate and really don't have alternative routes, their price sensitivity is incredibly low. And that allows the city to charge a massive markup.
And finally, we arrive at psychological pricing. You literally see this everywhere. A retailer pricing a product at 9,500 kwacha instead of an even 10,000 kwacha. It's a classic marketing ploy designed to create this quick illusion in your brain that you're getting a significant deal. It totally exploits our initial impressions before we actually stop to do the math. So the next time you're out shopping, whether it's for an on-sale item, a bundled car package, or just a tiny little jar of cinnamon, ask yourself, are you actually getting a deal, or has a savvy manager just successfully extracted your reservation price? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes open out there.